Welcome, I'm Darren, and I'll be your guide today as I look at the 2001 and 2002 Topps Gallery sets for football. Topps Gallery was kind of a fun concept that they came up with, where the idea was that they were going to have cards that were associated with the players. They were handed to the players and then they were distributed through them, and then for the rest of the cards in the set, it's kind of like you had an attachment to the players. And while the concept was a really wonderful idea, how it would turn into reality is kind of a tricky, it doesn't work cleanly. So the concept, I don't know how well the concept worked over time, but that was really kind of the thing. They were trying to create a card that had an interactivity or a relationship to the actual players. And the cards, they were able to keep it going in baseball for pretty much the entire run of Topps Gallery. But in basketball, it didn't really work. Football, they tried, didn't really work. And so in 2000, they just leaned way in and they got back into doing it for all three sports. And in so doing, you get to see some different ideas for how to approach it. They had to kind of play around with it. The 2000 set is pretty straightforward. It's basically just a late 90s, early 2000 card set. And that was kind of the thing. They got away from playing tricks and they made basically just a really good card set. Or they made a pretty good card set, which for that time was a really good card set. But the hobby was making a major change at this time. The 90s, that had kind of run its course. And so the hobby needed to evolve into something else. And Topps Gallery, they needed to rethink it. And so what they did was they leaned back into the name, Gallery. And they decided to put the emphasis on that. So the cards that they made for 2001 were works of art. Every single card shows a portrait of a player that's actually a painting. These cards, they actually have canvas around well, they don't have canvas, but they have a canvas print around the outside. And then it's like a lacquered surface for the player's picture. And a really nice little box down at the bottom just makes the card really look cool. And that was what they wanted to do for the set. They wanted the set to be like a work of art, something that's really interesting, really exquisite, and really special. And you'll have to forgive the card backs because the card backs they look like insert card backs. It's just, they put all the energy onto the card front and kind of ran out by the time they got to the card backs. So that's just kind of the way that it worked. But that was the way that they designed the cards. And that was done for the entire set, so every single player has a portrait. And boy, some of these portraits look great. I mean, the art on this just really does read well. It's a gorgeous set to look through. It doesn't work too well for team building because these cards only work well on an individual basis. But if they do, they look great. So if you're a fan of a particular player, you're in luck. This card set is built just for that. And then the card set just runs right into the rookies, and the rookies look the same as the veteran cards. There's really almost no difference, except the rookies have silver foil, so that is a distinct difference, and they have the rookie card down below. Again, these are great looking rookie cards, so for anybody who has a rookie card in this set, this is one of those that just looks great. And then along the idea of Topps Gallery, in the previous year, they'd already done their heritage cards, they were retro cards that were designed to look like the original Pro Topps set for football. So here in 2001, they decided, you know what, why don't we actually include some legends? So the set concludes with a series of legends, not a lot. So you have Walter Payton, you have Jim Brown, you have Sonny Jurgensen, and they have bronze down at the bottom, but the cards just feed right into the whole theme of the card set. You might not even notice they're there if it weren't for the bronze plate down at the bottom. That's really the only way to realize that they're different. And it is kind of tantalizing to think about if they had done a set where they had the veterans and the legends all intermixed, because it really would just seamlessly blend through. They didn't. We just had a few. And the card set ends at 144, which is wonderful for those of us who do binders. Clean right at the end of the binder page. Except they didn't let us off the hook. They decided to add a 145th card as an SP card, which was Joe Namath. This gets us to start into the next page, so I guess we got to collect some insert cards. And the Joe Namath card has him in his Jets uniform, and yeah, only no. because they also did another version. They had a retail version and they had a hobby version. So they also had a version where he's in his big fluffy jacket. And this is a harder one to get. So they actually have two versions of the same card. The only difference is the portrait. Everything else about the card is the same, including the number on the back. They also decided to do a sweepstakes. And for this, they made a card that was a take on their famous Topps Bucks cards. And so they used the same design, kind of the same design as the Topps Bucks, except they used a normal card size, so they just changed that. So on the front, it has that with, well, guess what? Joe Namath. So we actually get 3 Namath cards right here at the end of the set, for the most part. And then for inserts, start off, they did do autographs, but for the autographs for 2001, they used the exact same card as the main card in the set. So these cards look really, really nice. And they just have like an eraser mark for a whitish patch for the autograph to go onto it. They have the autograph stamp, and on the back they have a sticker for the authentication. But this is from that wonderful time when they still did autographs straight on the cards. So these cards look wonderful for the few players who do have autographs. They also did the Topps Gallery Heritage cards again. But the Heritage cards are a little bit different. They used the 1958 model for the cards, and it's they do have a couple of legends, but most of it is just veteran players. And the cards do have a parallel, but not like in 2000, where in 2000 they had the proof cards, which was very slightly changed. Here they went ahead and they did relics cards. They had jersey swatches in the cards. And it was not every single player. It was only 5 players, but actually it's 5 relic cards, but only 3 with jerseys. The current players all have jerseys, but the legend cards, those have seat relics. So it's little pieces of wood. And in the case of all 5 of these, they also have autograph versions of, well, the relic cards. So they have kind of a whitish strip for the autograph, and these are very, very difficult to come by. And so that is the way that the autographs of the Heritage cards come. They're only of the relics cards, so only of these 5 players. They also did a Gallery Originals, and Gallery Originals is another relics card. In this case, it is just jersey swatches. They have like an artist's paint board, and then one of the splotches for pigment that's the hole for the jersey swatch, but that's the way it works. Nice concept. I don't think it worked too well, but they tried. And then they have their Star Gallery cards. And these are basically league leaders. That's pretty much what it comes down to. This is like the last vestige of the 90s. They just tacked this in to, because they, I guess, needed another insert. But that is the close for 2001. Now, 2001 appears to have been successful enough that they decided to make a 2002. But they also didn't want to really change things too much. So the 2002 cards also have artistic renderings of the players for all the cards in the set. But they also toned back the design of the cards. So instead of having a very strong design component, here they have the art just kind of fade off onto the canvas, only it's not a canvas. Here they don't have the texturing on the top of or on the surface of the card. Instead, it just fades into a regular white area around the outside. Everything's smooth. And they have silver foil, which is a dumb idea because it's really difficult to read that text. They also fade straight into the rookies, and in the case of the rookies, there is something distinct about this where they have that red strip down at the bottom. Otherwise, the rookies do look the same as the regular cards in the set, and the art is not nearly as good as in 2001. 01, they really put their energy into it. 02, I don't know that I would say they took shortcuts, but they definitely weren't working as hard to really make them exquisite works of art. But still, it's a nice break. It's just really nice to look at these cards that just look so different from everything else. But while they weren't doing parallels, again, just 2001, they didn't do parallels. 2002, they still didn't want to do parallels, but they did want to do some variations, play around with that. And the difference between a parallel and a variation is a parallel is the same card, but they make a very strong, distinct difference in the card. So you look at the two and you go, oh yeah, I see how they're the same, but they're not the same. A variation is where the cards are identical, but there's something in it, some little hidden element that's different. Well, maybe it's hidden, maybe it's kind of a stronger element, but it's basically the same card, but it's changed, actually changed. And it's, for some people, it can be kind of confusing. You're going to see here just how it's not confusing here at all, but it's tricky. So Clinton Portis doesn't help us, so let's move over to Ashley. In the case of Ashley, the difference is really tough to find. You got to work at it, and I'm going to help you out. Look at his left knee. His left knee is your right side. And you'll notice that on the one on the right, it actually has a grass stain on it. And it's very subtle right down at the bottom of the card, but that's the difference between these cards. Pretty tough to read. Now, if you're thinking, man, are they all that way? Well, let's look at Julius Peppers and let's see. So in the case of Julius Peppers, what you want to be looking at is his ear. The variation, the one on the right, has an earring. And if you're thinking, man, that is ridiculously subtle. Yeah, that is ridiculously subtle. I mean, to me, this almost isn't even a game. I remember as a kid, we'd go in and we would spend hours studying our cards. But these cards were not designed for kids. They were designed for people with a lot of money, which meant we tended to have jobs and maybe family. We had other priorities. Nobody had the time, nobody who had a cache of these cards had the time to really sit down and go through this. Only a few people did, so we do have a checklist of what cards are changed. And I highly advise that if you want to find it, either one, look it up, or two, be very patient looking at various images, because these are tough to read. And then they did autographs again in the same way where they did the regular card in the set. It's just the same, except in this case, they actually use gold foil for the foil, so that is different. But otherwise, autograph on the front, the autograph logo, the sticker on the back. But there's also another version of this. They actually did a parallel of these autographs, which is their artist proof. Now, the card fronts look identical, so there's nothing to look at there. But the card back, it has the artist's actual autograph on the card back, and it's individually numbered out of 100. So all the autographs come this way. So there are two versions of these cards. So do keep that in mind for '02. They also did the Gallery Heritage cards again, and in this case, they actually did reprints, sort of actual rookie cards. The reason I say sort of is because while the card is done the same way, the image is done as an artistic rendering of the image of the card. So that's the difference. These cards are otherwise the same, but the picture of the player is art for these cards. Now, it's not something you're ever going to confuse because these are thick cards, they're very firm, they're highly lacquered. You're not confusing them for the originals. But this was the way that they did their heritage cards here in 2002. And again, they did their relics, but in this case, the relics are not done the same way as the main unrelicked cards. Here it's horizontal. It's a very different take on the same idea, but you get to see the artistic rendering without the rest of the card on it. Not that you see very much of the artistic rendering, but still, they are essentially parallels. And then again, they did their Gallery Originals, which is, again, just a jersey swatch. And in this case, they took the paint board and it's the mixing area that they put the jersey swatch in. And the one thing that I really am disappointed about with the '01 and the '02 sets is that they did not continue their Gallery of Heroes cards, the stained glass cards. Those were awesome. That was one of the things that they just figured no longer had a place here in these sets. I would say that otherwise the sets are almost universally an improvement over everything that they'd been doing in the 90s. But I really do wish they had some more stained glass cards. Otherwise, that's what they had. They did not see a reason to do a 2003 set, though, for football. So this was the end of the road for Topps Gallery for football. But I don't know about collecting in 2003, but as a collector years later, going back and finding these things, man, I wish that there was an '03 set because it would have been nice to see them progress this overall. That's kind of where I would go with it. But at least we do have these 2 years, and mainly we have the '01 year. I just love the '01 year. So that's the video. That's what I've got to say about this. I have done the 99 or 97 and 2000 video. I've done that. Definitely check that out if you haven't seen that already. If you haven't subscribed, make sure to subscribe and do ring the bell to be notified. And yeah, thank you very much for watching.